I'm Mike Ahern. I'm about to go one-on-one with the Patachou's Martha Hoover.
After 4 decades of reporting the stories that shaped Indiana's history, now he's bringing you face-to-face with today's newsmakers. This is Mike Ahern, one-on-one.
It all began here at the corner of 49th and Penn, where 23 years ago, a woman with absolutely no restaurant experience opened a place she called Patachou. Today, the attorney-turned-restaurateur, Martha Hoover, joins us to talk about her surprising success and her future plans. Martha, welcome to One-on-One. It's so good to have you with us.
Pleasure being here.
The name Patachou, where does that come from?
Well, it's a French term for cream puff. Everybody, of course, knows what a cream puff is and eclair. But I decided to name the restaurant Patachou because before I started my first restaurant, I worked for Steve Goldsmith in the prosecutor's office. And we had a meeting one day, and I was basically saying something a little sappy to him about how if we, taught everyone how to read or something like that, that we wouldn't have the crime problem we have. And he told me I was a cream puff. Oh. So I really named it for that moment, named the restaurant after that moment.
So French word is?
The French word is Patachou.
Patachou, okay.
Yes.
I assume you send him a royalty check every month for the ad.
Yes, I do, absolutely.
You were born in Brooklyn, New York.
I was born in Brooklyn, but almost immediately after being born in Brooklyn, my parents moved to Galveston, Texas, where I grew up until we moved to Indianapolis, Indiana.
What was dinner conversation like for your family? Do you talk politics or sports, or do you talk food?
Well, we talked a little bit about everything. We had a very active dinner conversation, but mostly we talked about the food. Of course, when I grew up in the 50s and 60s, you didn't eat out as much as people eat out today. And so my mother, very traditional housewife, made dinners every night, and we loved what she cooked. But what we really loved was talking about what we were going to eat the next day, the next dinner, the next breakfast. We seemed to always chase every meal with the conversation about our next meal.
So you were born to this, but your education was as an attorney.
That's right.
You came to Indianapolis to attend IU, right?
No, I actually went to high school here, went to middle school and grade school, moved here. My father moved here for his profession, for his job. So, of course, we came as the family. And I went to IU and did practice law for a short period of time. I practiced with Steve Goldsmith in the prosecutor's office. But quite honestly, as proud as I was of that job, and of course, working as a prosecutor, we did remarkable things with the sex crimes unit and worked in the grand jury, worked in child support, worked all over the office for Steve. But really, I didn't have the passion for it that I really felt that I needed to have to be a tremendous success in the legal world.
And yet you say that there was a great preparation, actually, being in the prosecutor's office for the restaurant business. How so? Well,
it was a great preparation working for someone like Steve Goldsmith at that period of his career. He was known, of course, for being very bright, but he was also known for being very creative. And he taught me that whatever the problem is, every problem is an opportunity, and every opportunity there has to be a solution. And so he taught us all as prosecutors to think quickly on your feet, to be flexible thinkers, and to look for whatever that positive thing was out of every issue.
How did you make that transition then from law to the restaurant business?
Well, it was probably clunkier than I remember, if you want to know the truth. I had a very supportive husband. I opened up my first restaurant in 1989 in the neighborhood where we live, Meridian Kessler, still what I think is one of the finest neighborhoods, not just in the city, but literally in the United States. It's remarkable. Opened up my first restaurant at the corner of 49th and Pennsylvania. And, it was one of those things where opening a restaurant without any restaurant experience, not knowing that I was pregnant with my third child, having never worked in a business, all of those should have been real recipe for disaster.
Red flags.
Right? Red flags that it was not going to work. And of course, couple that with the fact that restaurants are known for their failure rates.
High failure rates.
High failure rates. They're very competitive industry, and it's a difficult industry. But luckily, I was drawn to it, and I think that the fact of the matter is that my lack of experience in a traditional restaurant is probably what got me to be a success.
You say you were surprised when you moved to Indiana because there was an abundance of food properly grown and raised in the state, and yet there was no, as you call it, farm-to-table service at the time.
Well, and of course, farm-to-table is a new phrase. No one, in 1989, when we were practicing farm-to-table philosophy with our food, there was no such term as farm-to-table. I remember as a young girl visiting my grandparents who live in Brooklyn, New York, and going to one of the fruit markets in New York with, actually with my father. And we were looking at all this beautiful produce, and there was a pile of Decker County melons. And he said, "Oh my God, those are Decker County melons from Decker County, Indiana." Now, I was probably 14. I had never tasted a Decker County melon, and that was not anything that you could get in a grocery store in Indianapolis, Indiana. So I was shocked and amazed that here I was in Brooklyn, New York at a really beautiful fruit store, and they had produce from Indiana that I couldn't get even though I lived there. And I just thought that was wrong.
We'll continue our conversation with Martha Hoover of Patachou right after this.